Man, something's off today. Can't stream to X or to Facebook today, so it's only on YouTube and TikTok. Guys, you waited until marriage for segs. Can't say the real word because we can't be adults until the 8-minute mark. But you wait until marriage for the segs, and yet your wife still sees it as a sin. Here's how to fix it, starting now. We're going live.
We'll do it live.
You're listening to the premier podcast for men who want to not only be better with women, but want to be better men in general. This is the Come On Man podcast. And here's your host, Paul Bauer.
It's Monday, boys. We're going to either make a lot of Christian men happy today or we're going to piss them off. There's no in between here. It's a toss-up how they're going to react. I sometimes get Christian comments on videos that don't even discuss religion. Just these evangelists who like to wave their religious dickwaz in everyone's face. Anyway, if you guys are new to the channel, my name is Paul Bauer, and I help men level up and get better with women. And the funny thing about leveling up and getting better with women is it tends to make us better men in all areas of our lives. So here's a comment scenario that I see a lot of Christian men facing. You honored God, did things the right way, but now segs is either rare, passionless, or completely avoided. You're confused, you're frustrated, and you feel like something's broken. She was taught that segs is dirty, sinful, and only for procreation. When she does have segs, it feels forced, like an obligation instead of a passionate connection. Today, I'll show you exactly how to fix this. No begging, no negotiating, just rebuilding her attraction and reprogramming her mindset so that she actually wants to have the segs with you. So make sure you watch it till the end and don't skip ahead because you might miss a key element to getting your prude Christian wife to enthusiastically want to bang you again. Before we get too far into it, do be sure to like, subscribe, and hit those notifications. I do have new episodes every Monday, Wednesday, and Friday without fail. And if you guys are watching live right now, please sound off in the comments. That helps boost us in the algorithm. It lets YouTube know that people are watching. I normally stream to Twitter and Facebook, but for whatever reason, both those connections are screwed up this morning. So I'm only streaming to YouTube. And I do have TikTok on over here on my left. But head on over to YouTube, guys, to watch this and interact. And guys, do consider sending super chats if you find value in any of this kind of content. That does help support the show, probably more than anything else. All right. Understanding the root of the problem, why you ended up here and why typical advice tends to fail. Okay. So let's talk about the betatization process. Now, this is the most common thing that we see. We see this in all relationships, not just Christian relationships, right? Where you didn't start off in a dead bedroom, right? It developed over time. She slowly lost attraction for you. And it's something that she does. She initiates this. It's a subconscious thing. There's 5 steps to it. If you guys get my free ebook, I talk about it. And She's Made You Weak. If you go to list.comeonmanpod.com, I explain the betatization process, but it's a 5-step process. And it starts with her testing you. It starts with her testing your mental frame, seeing if she can push your buttons a little bit, see if she can get you up in your feels, see if she can manipulate you, see if she can get you to change the plans. These are all little subtle things that women do. And if you fail, she loses attraction for you. Okay. Now she's not doing this in intentionally to lose attraction for you. She wants you to pass these tests. She wants you to win. She doesn't want to win. Right. But this is what women will do. They'll subconsciously test you. Most men have no idea how to handle that kind of stuff. Most men don't even realize they're being tested. You know, when I put things out there, they're like, oh, not all women test men, Paul. Yeah, they do. You're not noticing it, and you don't know that you're failing if you don't know that that's a test, right? So that's what tends to happen, right? They start testing you. It goes into a thing where they want you to be more vulnerable. Then they put you to work, and then their evolutionary selfishness kicks in, like all that kind of stuff, right? And the thing is that society and church isn't helping you with this process, because they're actually telling you to be more accommodating, be more predictable, be more safe, right? Be a good provider, be like really go hard on the beta traits, the beta comfort traits that make you a good provider and a good husband and a good father, but they don't make you an attractive man that she wants to bang. You know what I mean? That gets her primal urges going, gets her proverbial juices flowing. Those things make her feel comfort love, right? They induce oxytocin in her, which makes her feel comfort love towards you, like a family member, right? But it doesn't get her sexual juices flowing, if you know what I mean. The thing is that women are drawn to strong, confident men. And the sad thing is that religious men are often trained to be submissive, nice guys instead of leaders, right? They're told you need to be a servant leader. A servant leader is often the message you hear from church these days. You got to be a servant leader like Jesus, which means like you do all this stuff for her and you get nothing in return, and you're going to like it, buddy, because that's your job as a man. Well, that doesn't do anything for sexual desire. Does absolutely nothing. Okay. She gets all the benefit. You get nothing. Right. And so it's the church isn't teaching you how to be that attractive sexual guy that gets her juices flowing. Right. And then religious programming tends to make it worse. And I'm talking about her programming. Right. And sometimes it's always been this way. Right. And what I mean by that is what really inspired this episode was I had this DM conversation with a guy on Instagram, and he was telling me that he did all the right stuff, right? All the right stuff that the church wants you to do, which is don't have sex before marriage. Oh, we're not at the 8-minute mark. Darn it, guys, send super chats. I said the S word before the 8-minute mark. And there goes the monetization. Anyway, they didn't have sex before marriage, right? They only kissed, which I think is still acceptable under the church. They got married, and then on his honeymoon, he found out that his wife had this aversion to sex because of her religious upbringing. She was always taught that it was dirty, it was sinful, you shouldn't enjoy it. It's only for having kids, and that's it. And so on their wedding night, when they're supposed to consummate their marriage and actually be able to finally, under the eyes of God, enjoy each other, now she's still not into it because of her religious programming, right? So many women are raised with purity culture, guilt, and shame around sex. And so even when she does get married and it's supposed to be okay, she's had years and years of this paradigm built up in her that sex is this evil thing. And so even though it's supposed to be okay, she still has an aversion for it. Right. And so some of these women, they never learn how to actually enjoy sex. It's always in the back of their mind that they're somehow dirty for doing it. Right. And if they even want to, it's a sinful lust, type thing, and they feel guilty and bad for it. So it's a very negative experience for them all around. And the thing is that you would think a lot of guys have this concept that marriage is going to somehow magically flip the switch where all of a sudden, okay, she's been approved this whole time because the church tells her it's bad. But now that I put a ring on it, everything is going to be magically okay. Right. But the thing is, it doesn't work that way for a lot of women, because those deep-seated beliefs, they carry over. They carry over even when you put a ring on it. And on top of that, On top of that, once you put a ring on it, the number one reason women stop trying. Have you ever heard the expression bobbing for diamonds, right? Like women will give like the old oral sex until that you put a ring on it. Then after that, they're like, well, I don't have to do that anymore. I got a ring, right? Well, a lot of times guys will think that that sex is somehow going to get better after you put a ring on it. It's like, no, though, the opposite tends to happen because she now thinks she doesn't have to try anymore. She doesn't have any more competition anxiety, especially if you're always there going, I would never cheat on you, honey. I would never talk to another woman, honey. I wouldn't even look at another woman, honey. And she really, you really go out of your way to make her feel comfortable in the relationship so that she doesn't have anything to worry about. Well, the less that she has to worry about, the less she worries about having sex with you because she knows she doesn't have to try. She doesn't have to do anything, of value anymore. And so that's why like sex tends to dwindle after you put a ring on it. And it still flabbergasts me that guys think that putting a ring on it is going to somehow fix her sexual desire. It doesn't. It does the opposite. It makes it even worse, right? So if she's had all these sexual aversions because of her religious upbringing, putting a ring on it's not going to make it better. All right. But you'll never know because you Christian guys are like sex before marriage is bad. So you never go out and actually test drive the car before you buy it. You know what I mean? But that's neither here nor there. You guys are following your faith. I'm not judging you for that. But that's not true, right? Like guys who think that putting a ring on it's going to fix things. It almost never fixes things. It certainly tends to make it worse. And then if she's already got these like aversions to sex because of her religious upbringing, it's definitely not going to fix it, right? Why date nights, talking, and complaints don't work? Because that's another thing, right? Have you tried buying her flowers? Have you tried bringing her chocolates? Have you tried doing more date nights? Have you tried speaking her love languages? Like all that kind of stuff. Have you tried talking to her about it? Have you ever talked to her about how it makes you feel? Women don't care about any of that stuff. It's never going to work, right? Women are emotional creatures. Okay. Attraction isn't logical. You can't logic your way into a bedroom with her. You can't sit there and convince her like, well, hey, I'm your husband. This is your duty. You need to enjoy this, right? You can't logic that, right? She's just not going to be into it. Okay. And if it feels like a negotiation or an obligation, she's going to resent you for it, right? You can't. Dodger's right. Negotiating desire. You can't negotiate desire. Hey, Black Bear's in the house. What's up? The church teaches sex bad all the way until marriage, and then after marriage, they say nothing about it. Yeah. One time when I was married, we used to go to a church in Lemon Grove, California, because my ex-wife, her cousin's husband was a minister at this church, so we would go to that church every Sunday. And I really liked his message. He had pretty good sermons every week. And one week, his wife gave a lecture on sex and marriage and how important it is and how loving it is and how beautiful it can be and all that stuff. And I remember there was a lot of wives like the next week that were like, thank you. We needed to hear that, right? They needed to hear that message from another Christian woman saying, hey, by the way, it's okay to have sex with your husband. Like they needed to hear it from a Christian woman, like, because women, oh man, we're going to get into it, but they are so sort of like their reputation protection is inherently built into them, right? They are always worried about being judged and all that kind of stuff. We'll get into that more. But yeah, like they often don't talk about how great it can be and how it keeps your marriage going. But the Bible does talk about it. We'll get into it. But date nights don't work because see all this stuff, right? Date nights, talking about it, complaining about it, all that stuff is really unattractive behavior. It feels like a negotiation for sex. It seems like you're it ends up being a covert contract half the time. If you try to talk about it or you're complaining about it, you sound like a whiner. That all that kind of stuff further erodes your attractiveness in her eyes. It's not an attractive thing to be a whining, complaining guy seeking her validation all the time, right? So that's why none of that stuff works. So let me ask you this. If being too accommodating isn't the answer, what actually works? Well, in the next segment, I'll show you how to reprogram her thoughts on sex and reignite her attraction for you, okay? But first, man, we don't have a lot of people tuning in today. I wonder why that is. Is it Monday? You guys haven't woken up yet? You guys are still partying from the weekend? Guys, follow me on social media. The links are in the description. I'm on all the good platforms. Get on the email list, list.comeonmanpod.com. Get the free ebook, She's Made You Weak. It explains the betatization process and why attraction tends to erode over time in long-term relationships. And if you don't know this is happening, you don't know how to defend against it. Okay. Because you're just things are going to happen and then things are going to erode and you're going to be like, what happened? I don't know what happened. Well, this explains what happens. And if you can get back to the beginning of the betatization process, you can start reversing this stuff, right? And then speaking of that, I have a whole book out that really explains the whole process of turning that dynamic around. So if you're in a dead bedroom situation, your wife's no longer having sex with you, she's not finding you attractive anymore, you guys are arguing all the time, and you just know that things are eroding in your relationship and it's going downhill and you want to fix it and you don't want to be a quitter, then get my book, Get Her to Fuck You Again. Yes, I know it's not a very Christian book title, but you'll find it extremely valuable, especially if you're in a Christian marriage where your wife is no longer having sex with you, or if she does, it's very lackluster and she's just not into it. This book will help you turn that around. Let me play a commercial for that, and then we'll get back to the topic today and talk about how to reprogram her thoughts and reignite her attraction.
Are you tired of the dead bedroom? Wondering what happened to the passion, the connection, and the spark? Well, here's your answer. Introducing Get Her to Fuck You Again, a red pill guide to fix a dead bedroom, now on Amazon. This isn't about manipulation or tricks. It's about real strategies that work. If your wife has stopped being intimate with you, it's not because the love is gone. It's because the attraction is gone. And that's fixable. This book will teach you the skills to lead your marriage, rebuild your confidence, and become the man she can't stop thinking about. 3 reasons to get this book. 1. It breaks the cycle. You'll learn how to stop doing the same things that are killing her attraction and start doing the things that reignite it. 2. It's practical and proven. With clear, actionable steps, you'll build yourself into the man you were always meant to be. 3. It works for men like you. Paul Bauer has helped hundreds of men just like you fix their dead bedrooms. And now, it's your turn. Don't let another day go by feeling frustrated and disconnected. Go to Amazon right now and buy Get Her to Fuck You Again. Read it, apply it, and watch your marriage transform. The connection isn't gone forever. You just need the roadmap to get it back. And this book is it.
All right. Guys, the next segment here, it's all about the masculine reset and fixing you first. A lot of guys, when they first come to me, right, they come to me and they're like, I want her to change. She needs to do this. She needs to get out of her own head. She's the one that's got this problem. You know, she's the one that thinks sex is a sin. Like, oh, she needs to change. She needs to do all this stuff. But you got to realize that you can't change other people. You can only change yourself and how you show up, right? So all this stuff is about you. It's about how you show up in relationships. It's how you set the tone. It's how you lead interactions, including how to have these conversations with her from a position of authority where you can start convincing her to start reframing her mindset about some of this stuff. Okay. But one of the things that you need to do is you need to stop making her the center of your world, right? A lot of guys make their wives their whole world. They they focus on her. They're trying to make her happy all the time. If she's even remotely not happy with anything, they walk on eggshells and dance around trying to make her happy. Stop that. Okay. You've got to you can't control her emotions. It's not your job to make her happy. Right. So it's not your responsibility. If she's upset, let her be upset. Okay. It doesn't impact you. You've got to get to a place where you're emotionally centered as much as possible. It's not always possible, but as much as possible. Women need to feel polarity, right? And when I say polarity, we often describe that as the balance between masculine and feminine energy, right? They need to feel that polarity for attraction to be there. If you have stepped out of the leadership role, you started deferring to her, she makes all the decisions, you're trying to dance around making her happy all the time. She's basically on a pedestal and she's in charge of the relationship, and now she's looking down on you and she's losing attraction for you because you're not the head of the household now, right? You're not setting the tone, you're not leading, you're not in your masculine. When you make her the head of the relationship and you put all the decision power on her and you're trying to make her happy all the time, you're putting her in her masculine energy, right? And that feels unnatural to her. That's going to cause that attraction to erode. She's going to look at you like you're weak, like you're the one that should be making decisions. You should be the one that's being assertive. You should be the one that's setting the tone and leading. And if you're not doing that, she's going to lose attraction, right? You're going to be more in your feminine energy. You're going to be more passive. You're going to be more accommodating. You're going to be trying to do things to serve her, to make her happy, all the things that she should be doing for you. Right. And then she's going to look at you like you're acting like a woman, and that's going to kill her attraction. You end up being too predictable, too available, and you end up losing your edge. A lot of guys don't realize how much being a mystery and making her guess and wonder what you're up to and make her curious enough to ask about what's going on in your life. A lot of guys don't realize how important that is for attraction, right? They're open books. They tell her everything they're doing. They give her a play-by-play. They'll text her all day long, telling her, hey, I just had a ham sandwich. What are you up to? And like all that kind of stuff. If you're super predictable, you're always available. She knows that if she says jump, you're going to ask her how high. All that kind of stuff kills her attraction for you. Right. So you got to pull back a little bit, not be so much of an open book. Right. If she asks about your day, it was fine, but you don't really get into it. Make her dig that kind of crap out of you. That's how you become a mystery. Start going out, doing things on your own. Have a social circle. Go out on Thursday night with the boys or something. Right. Go to the gym. You don't have to ask permission to do all this stuff. Just start doing this stuff and make her wonder, like, what is he up to? Why is he always busy? Why is he doing all this kind of stuff? If the more she wonders about you, the more she's thinking about you, the more that attraction grows. Okay. You want to shift your focus back to your mission, right? Things like your fitness, your social life, your hobbies, all this kind of stuff. These are things that are important to you that you focus on outside your marriage, right? You need to build a great life for yourself, and your wife's just the icing on the top. She can't be your world. And if you make her, this great, you're trying to build a great cake of your life and you're trying to make her the cake, she's going to get resentment for you. She's going to lose attraction for you. She doesn't want to be the center of your world. You can't let her be. So you've got to get focused back on stuff that's important to you outside of the marriage, outside the relationship. That's all good stuff, right? That's all stuff standard, your everyday, be attractive, don't be unattractive type stuff. But what if her mindset about sex is still not that great, right? Now these are where you're going to have to lead her to feel more comfortable about it. Okay. So a lot of women, especially Christian women, believe sex is sinful, but the Bible actually celebrates sex within marriage, right? It's actually a good thing. And a lot of religions actually celebrate it. I think the Jewish religion looks at it like it's a mitzvah, right? Sex is a mitzvah. It's meant for you guys to enjoy each other. You know, it's a blessing. It's a blessing. If you guys have ever read the book, there's the Song of Solomon. The Song of Solomon, it's an erotic love poem that the early Christian church wanted cut from the Bible because they thought it was so dirty. You see where I'm going with this? Like a lot of this teaching comes from like the church itself, not the Bible. You know, people creating these doctrines that didn't write the Bible. They weren't there. They weren't there at the crucifixion. They're just like coming up with rules because of how they feel. Like a lot of these rules and paradigms that they put on you comes from people with negative paradigms themselves, but it has nothing to do with scripture, right? But King Solomon had this really erotic love poem, and what it's sort of the message that it's putting out there is that God designed sex for pleasure, not just procreation, right? If it was just for procreation, it wasn't for pleasure, why would an orgasm feel so fucking good, right? Oh, that's just so God can test you. Stop it. Stop it. He designed it that way. He designed it for pleasure and connection. It's not just for having more kids and multiplying, okay? So you can help her shift her beliefs by subtly bringing up scriptures and books that affirm this. 1 Corinthians 7, 3-5, right? Basically says that husbands and wives should satisfy each other sexually, right? It commands you to do it. Satisfy each other sexually, all right? Now, some of these Christian wives will be like, yeah, I mean, I'm not going to deny him. I'm not going to be into it either. I'm just going to do it, and it's like an obligation, okay? You want to get her to enjoy it. So that means that you're not just basically using her vagina as a fleshlight to masturbate with, right? Like you want to learn some techniques to get in there, make sure she's orgasming, you know? And if she has a problem orgasming, a lot of women have a huge problem with vaginal sex and orgasming, right? You're just not hitting that G-spot right. You're just not getting the right angles, right? It's important to learn the angles, but also if you are just not ringing her bell that way, don't be afraid to like bring some toys in, you know, get some vibrator things and diddle her bean with it while you're having sex with her, right? Make it enjoyable for her. If you can make it an enjoyable experience for her, she's going to want to do it more. But a lot of guys don't even take that into consideration, and they're just like, I'm just gonna knock it out. I give her the best 3 seconds of her life, and then they roll over and go to sleep. Like, thanks, hon. Right? Like, she's not getting any enjoyment out of it. If she's not getting any enjoyment, why would she want to keep doing it? You know. Now, here's the thing too. Like, if you ever read, I think is it No More Mr. Nice Guy by Dr. Robert Glover. One of the things that he talks about is being more of a selfish lover in the bedroom. And I think what he's really referring to there is that's a good habit to get into if you're the kind of guy who is overly concerned with her pleasure, so much so that you're not getting your own pleasure. You're like, I'd much rather try to make her orgasm than ever feeling good. Like, she doesn't want that either. She doesn't want that kind of pressure to have an orgasm every time. Like, a lot of women get up in their own heads about that. So if that's you and you're overly concerned with that, sometimes it's best to take a step back and then just focus on your own pleasure and like you being really into it. And you know, a lot of times women knowing that you're into it will be more into it. You see what I'm saying? But if you're the kind of guy who's always been the selfish lover and you never give a shit, that's also a problem, right? So there's some balance here. Dodger says 3 seconds. Are you running a marathon? 2 seconds tops. That's my best offer. Yeah. Proverbs 5:18-19 essentially says that a man should delight in his wife's body. And then you're like, I'm trying to delight in her body. She's just not delighting back. right? But the point here is that the Bible's basically saying like you're supposed to, like that God wants you to be happy doing this. Okay. So that's the message that you need to subtly start conveying to her. All right. That, hey, Proverbs says that, we need to be into this, it's okay to enjoy this. And then also one thing that I've noticed working with guys is that as guys work on themselves and they start working on, like they're reading books like mine, like Get Her to Fuck You Again. They're trying to do things to level up and get better with women. Like I say at the beginning, when you level up to get better with women, you'll find that carries over into other areas of your life, right? But it tends to make you more of an attractive man all around. And when a woman sees a guy working on himself and he's working on his purpose and he's becoming more attractive again, and he's learning how to set the tone and lead, and he's learning how to be a better leader for the relationship, all that kind of stuff, she starts coming around, and then she wants to start investing more in the relationship too. And she's going to want to start studying more stuff to help her as well. I've seen that with my own relationship with Nurse Chick. She reads the Proper Care and Feeding of Husbands and Keys to the Kingdom on repeat, right? Those are two books that she recommends for women. What your wife, especially if she's a Christian woman, what she might find helpful is reading books by other Christian authors on this subject, right? Specifically sex and marriage. There's a lady named Sheila Ray Gregory, I think you pronounce it. She wrote a book called The Great Sex Rescue. It's a Christian-based book about sex for women. Now, I don't typically recommend relationship books, like Christian relationship books for men, but for women, hearing that sex is okay from another woman is usually helpful. It's usually helpful for them and their paradigms, because if they hear another woman saying it, Apex Mindset, Paul Benjamin, he says, women want to be good chimp in the community, right? So if she feels like she's going to be judged from the other women in the community, she's not going to want to do it. But if she gets permission from other women in the community that it's okay to enjoy sex and enjoy your sex life with your husband and have fun with it, and it's it's a blessing from God and all that kind of stuff. If she hears that message from another Christian woman, that's going to seep in a little bit better. Her ears are going to perk up a little bit better. She just needs permission from another woman to do that, right? So getting her to read a book from a female Christian author on how sex is okay in your marriage is probably going to help her, right? Rollo has an article about this from years ago, and one of the things that he recommends is passive dread, right? Inducing passive dread, or he called it in his article soft dread, but it's the same thing, right? But dread game is going to spark that attraction. Okay. And what's really great about passive dread or soft dread, whatever you want to call it, is that you're not sinning. You know what I mean? Like, you're not sinning. You're not going out. You're not cheating on your wife, like all the kind of stuff that would be bad. You're just being more of an attractive guy, right? You're hitting the gym. You're working on your diet. You're working on your money, muscles, game, and frame, all that kind of stuff, making yourself a well-rounded, more attractive guy that when you go out, you're social now. Your wife's going to see this. She's going to see that you're a fun, outgoing guy that gets the attention of other people, especially women, and you're not doing anything wrong. You're just a happening guy, right? But that kind of thing's going to help you because women like men that other women like. Right. And women aren't attracted to guys who end up chasing them, so if you're implementing soft dread, you're not chasing her. You're basically like, when she pulls back, you pull back too, and you go focus on yourself and leveling yourself up. And then she notices you're not chasing her anymore. You're not, overly pushing for sex. You're in your frame now, like all that kind of stuff. She starts noticing these changes, and she's like, man, he's doing all this stuff. He wasn't doing that before. And now he's more of attractive. I see like all these women like him now. Crap, he might leave me, right? And that reintroduces that competition anxiety, which makes her want to put more investment in. Okay. But if you start making these small changes, it's going to force her to reassess your value in her eyes. She's going to be like, oh man, wait a second. I actually have something good here. I need to put some investment in, right? And then probably the number one biggest thing that you can do in this circumstance, it's the same thing that we teach guys in the, when you're dating and spinning plates, and how to sexually escalate with women. You've got to make her feel comfortable and not judged, right? Women, when you're out dating and spinning plates, and you Christian guys probably haven't experienced this if you guys are good Christian guys, but if you're out dating and spinning plates and you're hooking up, you'll find that women do this thing called like last minute resistance, right? Where like they'll come back to your house, and a woman's not dumb. She knows that if she's coming back to your house, that the possibility of sex can very well happen, and she's not going to go there without going, yeah, I could be into it if he plays his cards right. I could be into it, right? She's not going to show up at your house putting herself in that position if she doesn't, she knows that it's a possibility. But what women will do is, as you're trying to sexually escalate, they'll say, oh, no, I'm not ready for that yet. I'm not ready, right? And this is where guys get confused, okay? Because, the Me Too movement will say no means no. It means no 100% of the time, right? But we all know, like guys who have had lots of women, you guys have dated plenty, you guys have had plenty of experience with this. You know that a no is not always a no, right? Sometimes it means not right this minute. Right? Like when I say that, like people lose their minds about it. They absolutely lose their minds about it, but it's true, right? We call this last minute resistance. So women will say, oh, I'm not ready for it yet. And what tends to happen is that ends up being a big shit test. And guys will lose their mind about it and be like, oh, why'd you come all the way over my house? And I cooked you dinner and everything. And right. Well, then you failed her test. She knows that you're up in your feels when she shoots that down. And she knows, well, I'm definitely not having sex with you now, not with that kind of reaction. But a guy who succeeds will pull back a little bit and be like, hey, no worries, no problem, right? You want another drink? Like, whatever, he'll go back to the conversation, basically not fazed by her saying no. And a lot of that is just a woman has this existential fear that a man's not going to stop when she tells him to. So as long as you stop when she tells you to, she's going to go, oh, okay, he stopped when I told him to. All right, now let's do it. Now let's do it. There's a, and I'm going to get women arguing with me about it, but there's a female comic who has a whole bit about this where she's like, I don't know about you ladies, but when I meet a guy and I'm like, oh, we're not having sex right now. And he's like, okay, no worries. She's like, congratulations, my boy. You just won the golden ticket to the chocolate factory. Because women are very much like that. All of a sudden, as soon as she knows that you'll stop when she says, now she feels comfortable. She feels safe with you. Now she's like, okay, cool. Another thing too is they want to make sure that you're not judging them, right? And a lot of guys are very judgy when it comes to this thing. A lot of guys have what we call a Madonna whore complex, where they look at women that put out easily as slooty sleuths, but women that hold out and they make them wait until marriage or whatever. Oh, these are wifey material. But you'll find that 99.99% of the women out there are breaking rules for guys that they're sexually interested in, and they are making rules for guys that they're not that sexually interested in. So it's the same girl, right? The same girl that's making you wait for 3 months or until you're in an exclusive relationship or until you're married. She banged a guy with a throat tattoo in the Waffle House parking lot on the first date, right? Or she just skipped the date, went over to his house and like had a one night stand with some random guy on Tinder because he had a cool face tattoo or something, right? Like women will break rules for guys that they have the hots for, and they will make rules for guys that they're not that sexually attracted in. They're the same woman though, right? So you as long as you understand that, hey, now you're going to actually be more on the lookout for women that have high sexual desire for you, because that typically means that they're into you. Like, they find you sexually attractive. Those are the kind of women you actually want to be with if you don't want to end up in a dead bedroom situation, right? Like, why would you think that a woman that didn't want to have sex with you is going to somehow, it's going to get better when you put a ring on it? Like, that's what we were talking about at the beginning. But here's the thing, right? So a lot of women are afraid to be judged. So they'll do that last minute resistance thing so that to make it look like, hey, I'm not a slutty slut, right? I don't just give it up to anybody. But as long as you make her feel comfortable, like, hey, don't worry about it. I'm not going to tell all the people, like, you let your freak flag fly, right? You make her feel comfortable in her own sexuality, and that you're not going to judge her for it, and you're not going to blab about it to all the neighbors. Now she's more comfortable, and she's like, okay, cool. Like, now we can do this. Now she's going to feel safe and secure to express herself. So that's really what you're going to have to do. You're going to have to make her feel comfortable and not judged, right? And I think a lot of these Christian women that are in this circumstance, they feel judged. You know, especially if you're a strong Christian man, you pray all the time, you go to church all the time, she's going to feel judged by you as a Christian. So you have to make her feel comfortable. And it's like, hey, honey, it's okay. It's okay if you're into that, if you like that one kinky thing that you like, it's okay. Like, make her feel comfortable, right? Yeah, if you make her feel accepted, not judged, like, you will keep her dirty little secrets safe, she'll be more open to explore her sexuality with you. You understand? All right. So guys, reframing sex is just a part of the equation, all right? If you don't maintain attraction, she'll still resist. So in the next segment, I'll show you how to handle resistance, pass her tests, and get her wanting you again. Before we get into that, though, a lot of guys here in the chat are in my beer club, beer.comeonmanpod.com. It's a good group of men. A lot of guys don't have a solid group of men that they can go to. Now, if you are a Christian man, you probably have your church, and there's probably men in your church that you can go to, and that's well and good. But a lot of those men are conditioned and trained and brought up with the same paradigms that you've been brought up in. Paradigms that don't necessarily work when it comes to sex and attraction, right? And so if that's you and you want to level up your game and get better at that, it's better to get with a group of guys that are studying this kind of stuff. And Beer Club has about 50 guys in there. They're all studying this stuff. They've all been through what you've been through. Some of them are Christian guys that have been through this type of thing with their wives. It's a great place to get in there, swap notes with like-minded guys, hold yourself accountable, level up in all areas of your life, okay? It's only $10 a month. And then, guys, look, if you are in the situation, if you're in a dead bedroom, you've been married for a long time, you are a Christian, so getting divorced is, you feel like it's a sin, but you also don't want to live in this dead bedroom situation. And so that means that you need to fix it, right? That means if you're going to be happy and live the rest of your days in this committed married relationship that you have a covenant with God about, and you don't want to throw that all away, let's fix it, okay? Go to call.fixdeadbedrooms.com. I work with men in your exact situation. We can turn this around for you, okay? All right. Passing shit tests and creating sexual urgency. So we're going to talk about how to handle resistance and spark that desire again. So why will she push back? She's going to push back, okay? Women test men's strength. They do it not to be shitty. We call these shit tests, right? But they do it not to be shitty, but to test to see if you have your shit together, okay? If she's able to manipulate you, if she's able to get under your skin, if she's able to get you up in your emotions, knock you off center, her respect and attraction tend to fade. Okay. And I'm telling you, man, like, if you make a plan and say, okay, we're going out Saturday night, I know a great steakhouse, And then she tries to change those plans and she's like, I don't like steak. I don't like steak. Let's get burgers instead. Right. That kind of stuff, especially when you're dating, it's an absolute shit test. If she's trying to get you to change the plans, but basically she's trying to see if you'll let her get in the driver's seat and say, well, the best way to handle that sort of thing is to be like, let's get burgers next time. We're getting steaks this time. Right. Stick to the plans. Now, when you're married, it's a little bit of a different situation. So what I like to tell guys to do with that sort of thing is just pick places to eat, right? Like, let's go get steak tonight. She says, I don't like steak. Let's go somewhere else. Then you ask her, okay, well, do you have a better suggestion? If she does, there's no reason not to go with her suggestion. Okay, right. But if she says, no, I don't have a better suggestion, then she's just testing you. She's just testing you. Because what a lot of guys will do in that situation, I see it so many times. It doesn't matter how many times I tell guys this key to the dinner debate. They'll start throwing out more things. Okay, well, we could go here. Oh, we could go here. Oh, we could go here. What do you think about this place? Well, now you're leaving decision making up to her, which is making her the leader of the relationship, right? You've already failed the test by this point. So stop doing that. Just be like, do you have a better suggestion? No? Great. Well, I'm going to get steak. You're welcome to join me, right? That's how you handle that kind of stuff. She wants to know if you'll fold. And if you don't fold, if you stick with your guns, you stick with the plans, she respects you more. Okay. And a lot of the times they're not even conscious. She doesn't even know that she's doing it. Right. There's subconscious ways of seeing if you're truly a confident guy who's assertive, knows what he wants, if you're decisive, if you're going to actually set the tone and lead. It's all one big test. Right. One way that she might test you too, and you'll find that a lot of guys, when they start working on this stuff and they're in a marriage, they're going to start acting differently. They're going to start acting differently because what they've been doing this whole time isn't working. That's why you're in a dead bedroom situation, right? So you start working on this stuff. She's going to notice these changes and she's going to want to test them. And now she's not testing them to be a bitch. She's testing them to make sure that this new way that you're acting is how you're going to act going forward. She likes the way you're acting, right? So she might test and say, why are you acting different? Right? You're acting different. Why are you acting different? That's a shit test. Okay. So how do you handle that? Well, there's different ways of doing it, right? But you basically, the whole thing is to see if she could knock you out of your frame. And your frame is essentially how you see the world, right? And your new frame, your new mindset is that you're the leader of the relationship, you're setting the tone and you're leading, right? So when she asks you something like that, you don't get defensive, right? You don't start explaining yourself. Well, I've been reading all these books and I've been tuning into Paul's podcast and I hired Paul as a coach and we're working on, all this stuff. You don't explain any of this shit. Okay. You don't need to. A king doesn't have to explain himself to his subjects, right? Like this is the mental model you need to have. All right. I don't have to explain myself. So stop doing that. Right. You want to stop being needy, which means, whenever she seems mildly upset, you go around going, what's bothering you? What's bothering you? Like that's needy behavior. Stop doing that. Let her feel however she's going to feel. You be unaffected by it. A good tool when handling her test is agree and amplify, right? That's where you take whatever she says, you agree with it, and then you bring it up to an absurd level, right? She's like, why are you acting different? And, you could say, you could take it up to an absurd level and be like, oh, well, how am I acting? Am I acting like a clown? Ooh, and start acting like a clown and do whatever, right? That would be like an agree and amplify. I find a lot of guys in my coaching program have a hard time with agree and amplify. They have a really hard time with it because in order to be able to be good at agree and amplify, you have to be able to think quickly and be witty on your feet, right? If she says something, you have to be able to like make a joke about it off the cuff. And if you're not that guy, it's going to be challenging for you to do the agree and amplify thing. So what I tell clients with that is practice free association with words. right? And free association with words is where you say a word, you blurt out a word, and then immediately blurt out the next word that comes to mind that's related to that word, right? So if I say blue, you might say sky, and then clouds, and then airplanes, right? Like whatever comes to mind when I say a specific word, you just start blurting that out. That'll help you start thinking quicker on your feet, being more witty, being able to do agree and amplify a little bit better. If you can't do that, then indifference is your best friend. And indifference means like, it's not that you don't care. It means that you're not bothered by her emotions, right? So she says, why are you acting different? An indifference response to that would be like, I'm acting different. Right? You just ask her a question. I'm acting different. But, without any kind of reactivity, it's very just matter of fact, like, oh, that's an interesting observation. That would be like agreeing with or responding with indifference, right? But the worst thing you could do is getting defensive about any kind of thing like that. So here's an example, right? She says, oh, now you think you're hot shit. I don't know if a Christian woman would say that, but she might. Oh, now you think you're hot shit. So you might agree and amplify with damn right. It's about time you noticed, right? But you got to say that kind of stuff like with playfully, like you're joking, right? Add a little wink to that sort of thing. You want to reintroduce playful, non-pressured sexuality, right? So you got to understand, like, attraction is spontaneous. It's not scheduled. How many of you guys that are married, you guys do nothing all day to seduce your wife? Everything is very just matter of fact, standard, typical day. You go to work, you come home, she makes dinner, she asks you about your day, you tell her about your day. Maybe you watch some television shows together, and then you go to bed, and then you expect sex, right? Like clockwork. It's like clockwork like that. Well, that kind of scheduled, hey, we do this every night at 10, or even worse, where you don't have sex every night. And she's like, okay, look, we need to be more intimate again. So like, let's do Thursday night as sex night, right? So you have scheduled sex once a week. That's boring as hell. It's not attractive. She's not into it. It's totally an obligation at that point. A lot of guys are happy like that. They're like, oh no, at least I'm getting it, right? You got to understand that you're on borrowed time. If that's where you're at, you're on borrowed time. Okay. So instead of like scheduled date nights or scheduled sexy nights, surprise her with an activity that you picked, you planned, and then you enjoy, and make it fun. Make it a fun experience. A great example of this is last Friday was Nurse Chick's birthday. And I originally asked her if there's anything specific that she wanted for her birthday. And she originally sent me a link for like a stand-up comic that's coming to town, and he's going to be here this Thursday. But it's not really a great night because Thursday night's like a school night. She's got to go back. She gets her kids back on Thursday, and it's just then she's got to get a sitter and like whatever, all that kind of stuff. Well, she doesn't really have to get a sitter. Her two older kids are old enough, but still, it's not a convenient night, and it's not on her birthday. And I was like, that's not going to work. So I was like, don't worry, I'll take care of it. Right. So I looked to see what was available in town on Friday night on her birthday. And really the only thing that came up was the circus. The circus came to town, and I go, oh, okay, let me take a look at their website. Let me see what they got going on and stuff. And I saw that it was a fairly legit circus. They had some serious big acts there. And I was like, okay, that's what we're doing. I'm going to take Nurse Chick for her birthday to the fucking circus. And I was like going into it, it's either going to be a good show and it's going to be fun, or it's going to be a terrible show and I'm going to make it fun, but that was my mindset going into it. And so do that kind of thing, right? Keep her guessing, and then make those plans, and then say, hey, we're going out Friday night, and don't tell her what you're doing. I didn't tell her we were going to the circus. I just brought her to the circus, and she had a lot of fun with it, So instead of doing scheduled date nights, keep her guessing. Okay. like having date nights is a good idea. It's good to date your wife and keep that attraction going, but you can't let it become a routine. Like any kind of routine kills attraction over time. Okay. Um, don't wait until it's bedtime for sex, right? Initiate without any kind of expectation. Make it playful, right? If the kids are out of the house, do it in the middle of the day on the coffee table, right? Like don't like just be spontaneous with it. Always be seducing. I talk about it in my first book. ABS, always be seducing. Always be walking up, kissing her on the back of the neck, putting your arm around her, breaking that touch barrier a little bit at a time throughout the day, pulling back, going in, doing it a little bit, an hour later, 2 hours later. Always keep that sexual escalation going, and then periodically bang her on the coffee table, right? I like to take Nurse Chick on road trips, and we'll periodically pull off on the side of the road somewhere in the middle of nowhere and just do it out in the desert in the back of the car. Like that spontaneity keeps things fresh and exciting. And women actually really get a kick out of that kind of stuff. Okay. But if you're boring and you only do it in your bedroom, like she's not going to want to do it. Right. Flirt throughout the day, right? Text something suggestive, whisper in her ear in public. This doesn't sound like a very Christian thing to do. I'll tell you what, my one of the guys in beer club, he's completely turned his marriage around, and he was in a dead bedroom situation for a lot of years. And he was able to turn turn things around in his marriage by doing all the stuff that I talk about. And on top of that, his wife will send him dirty text messages now. And he's like shocked by it. Right. And so he's like, what have you done with my wife? Right. He'll say that to her. And I'm like, don't do that, dude. Like encourage that. don't make her feel judged for it. Right. But he's like, I'm just so shocked. Right. I'm just so shocked she's doing it. Not that he doesn't like it, but he's just like, what the hell? And I'm like, no, don't do that. Make her feel good for it. Like reward that good behavior. Okay. It's operant conditioning. You want to get her to feel comfortable with her own sexuality. That's how you're going to get her to snap out of this prude behavior and start enjoying sex. Right. All right. Yeah. You want to help her feel safe to explore her sexuality, right? Many Christian women, they're really fearing that judgment for enjoying sex. You have to let her know it's okay. It's totally okay, hon. Right? It's totally okay. In fact, like God wants you to enjoy sex, right? And you can even like lead conversations with this. There's an effective communication model that I learned from Paul Benjamin with Apex Mindset. I talk about it in Get Her to Fuck You Again. It's called the Luca model, right? Where you listen, you understand. If you don't understand, you ask clarifying questions, and then you come up with an action. Sometimes the action is to just listen to her, okay? But you want to get a conversation going about what would make sex exciting for her, right? What's something you've always wanted to try but never felt comfortable talking about? That's something, right? And make her feel safe and not judged. And like, I'm not telling anybody, this is our little secret, but get her to talk about this stuff. And, if you're down with some of that stuff, like do the stuff, right? Do some of these dirty things with her. If you've ever read Nancy Friday's book, it's a filthy, dirty book. I couldn't finish it because it was that bad. But basically you get the gist through like halfway through it. But women have these incredibly dirty sexual fantasies, and they are so afraid of being judged that they won't ever talk about it. And when Nancy Friday, who's the one that wrote this book, is called My Secret Garden, when she first was coming up with the concept, she was talking to married women around their husbands, right? And she was like, "Hey, I'm going to write a book, and I'm going to have women talk about their sexual fantasies." And these husbands are like, "Why do women need to have sexual fantasies? Like, honey, you don't have sexual fantasies, do you?" And of course, the wife's like, no, honey, of course not. That's preposterous, right? Because they're feeling judged by their husbands. But so what Nancy was like, realized is in order to get the truth out of women, to get women to feel comfortable opening up, I have to make it anonymous. So she allowed all these women to express themselves sexually without judgment and to be anonymous. And so some of these women's sexual fantasies are fucking disgusting. You know what I mean? Like, they are bad, right? But if she expresses some of these sexual fantasies and they're not even that bad, like, encourage it and let her know she's okay and she's normal and it's healthy. It's a healthy sexual expression, and especially in marriage. Like, if you're married and you're Christian, like, it's okay to do these things, right? So make her feel safe and secure about it. And here's the hard truth, though, right? Here's the hard truth. You can't change other people. You can only change yourself and how you show up. And you can do everything right. You can go to the gym. You can start looking better. You can start being more attractive. You can start getting to a place where all the other chicks in church want to bang your brains out, and your wife still doesn't, right? She still refuses to see sex as something good. You gotta start asking yourself, like, is this life that I'm living, is it worth being miserable for the rest of my life? She's not performing her duties as a wife. She doesn't want to perform the duties as a wife, under the covenant of God. Maybe I think God would be okay if you ended that marriage and you found a better wife, right? These are some things that you have to start thinking about. But oftentimes most guys won't even do that because they're like, oh, it's a sin. It's off the table. And they make it completely off the table for themselves. But it's like, life is short, man. Life is short. Do you really want to live the rest of your life this way? Something to think about. Okay. It's definitely something to think about. You have some decisions to make, but you got to understand that all this work of learning how to handle tests, learning how to, work on your money, muscles, game, and frame, learning how to flirt with her better, learning how to have more healthy communication with her, all that kind of stuff. This is all for you. It's not for her. Okay. And a lot of guys, their initial motivation is to get their wife to do this kind of stuff. And 9 times out of 10, she will come around, but that 1% of the time she's not going to come around. And you got to realize, like, you can't change her. This is about you leveling up. This is about you becoming a better guy, being more attractive, and being able to attract a better person in your life that's a better fit for you sexually, right? All right. Hopefully this was helpful to you guys. Tune into the podcast on Wednesday. We are finishing up the review of Get Her to Fuck You Again. We are finishing this up. We are going over chapter 10, which is all about recognizing that you've put in a lot of work on yourself and being a more attractive man who stops letting himself be taken for granted, right? That's what this whole process is. Stop letting yourself be taken for granted in your marriage. And now it's time to elevate, or now it's time to evaluate if your wife is getting on board with the program or not. So now it's time to decide, right? You need to really consider if it's time to leave her and move on with your life, or what you're going to do. And a lot of guys will jump to just the leave her part. I hear this on TikTok constantly. A lot of guys will just jump to the leave her part without ever working on themselves, right? She's the problem, not me. And then they find themselves in the next relationship with essentially the same problems. And they find that they're just dating the same woman with a different face every time, right? Well, it's because they've never done the work on themselves. So it's much better if you start working on this stuff now. And then your wife or your girlfriend either gets on board or she doesn't. But either way, you're in a much better position. Okay. And for those guys who have leveled up and she's still not coming around, leaving is often the best course of action for your own happiness. I was just having a conversation with a guy who finished up the program this morning about this. There's essentially like 5 things that happen when you start working on this kind of stuff, right? Like, and the ideal one is that your wife comes around and you have a loving, happy relationship with your wife. Okay. One of the things is that you replace her with someone better. What you'll find is that when you do level up and you start learning these tactics and you start learning how to set the tone and lead healthy relationships, it's much easier to go out in the dating circuit and find a woman that's going to follow your lead and then maintain that relationship from the beginning than it is to get into a relationship that was never a great fit in the first place, let that completely erode, and then try to turn that around. Okay. I mean, you can turn it around, but it's much easier once you've worked on yourself to start from the beginning. You know what I mean? So that's where you eventually have to get yourself to a place where you're like, you evaluate, hey, is she getting on board or isn't she? And if she's not, all right, well, where do I go from here? All right. So my book talks about that. We're going to talk about that on Wednesday. Thank you guys for showing up in the chat today. I hope you guys got some value out of it. Do be sure to like, subscribe, hit those notifications. I do have new episodes every Monday, Wednesday, and Friday. Thanks for the guys that sounded off in the chat. I appreciate you. I didn't see any super chats in there, but that's okay because then I don't get demonetized. Follow me on social media. The links are in the description. Get on the email list, list.comeonmanpod.com. Get the ebook, She's Made You Weak. It explains why attraction tends to erode over time. All my books are available if you go to books.comeonmanpod.com. I have 3 books out there. The latest one is Get Her to Fuck You Again. Guys, get in Beer Club, beer.comeonmanpod.com. Like I said, it's a good support group for men. There's about 50 guys in there. They're all leveling up. They've all been to where you've been. And if you go in there and you need some support from other like-minded guys, that's the place to do it. And then if your relationship is going downhill and you want to save it, book a free call with me. Go to call.fixeddadbedrooms.com. That's all I got. We will see you guys on Wednesday.
This has been the Come On Man podcast. New full episodes served hot every Monday morning on your favorite podcast platform of choice. So subscribe now. Follow Paul on social media. The links are in the description. Now, go out and get it.